Hello, this is Talking Europe on France 24. Today we are zoning in on LGBT rights in the EU. Over the last 2 years, more than 100 local authority areas in Poland have been declared so-called LGBT-free zones, meaning that they are no longer allowed to encourage tolerance towards LGBT people or give financial assistance to rights groups that do so. Well, in a response to that situation, a majority of European Parliament members have recently declared the entire European Union to be an LGBTIQ Freedom Zone. The declaration itself is symbolic. It doesn't have particular weight in law. So we're asking, what might it mean for LGBT people in the 27 member states? With us are, in Brussels, German Greens MEP Terry Reintke, who's co-chair of the Parliament's LGBT intergroup, and also a member of that group. Joining us from Bratislava, we have Slovakian MEP Michal Šimečka, who is Vice President of the Renew Europe group. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, thanks for being with us on the programme. Terry Reintke, as co-chair of the LGBT intergroup, I'll come to you first. Just tell us, for you, what does this Freedom Zone declaration mean?
Well, it certainly does not mean that we believe that full freedom and equality for LGBTI people in the European Union is already a reality, but it's meant as a message to the community all over the EU that we pledge as members of the European Parliament to fight for their rights and that we are not going to rest until this full equality is a reality. And it's also supposed to put pressure on actors like, for example, the European Commission to do more in order to stand up for LGBTI rights.
Michal, the declaration, as I said, in large part a response to the situation in Poland with these so-called LGBT-free zones. Can you tell us more about what those mean in practice?
In practical terms, the most devastating effect of these free zones in the Polish municipalities is, of course, the increase in hate towards the minorities. Sort of the psychological damage, of course, is huge, even though, as the Polish government says, it has no kind of legal effect. But the symbolic and the political and the psychological effect this has is enormous, and it causes enormous suffering, not just obviously in LGBTI communities in those counties, but all across Poland. And the situation is indeed quite alarming.
Just coming back to you, Michal Šimečka, in response to the declaration of the Freedom Zone, the Polish government said it rejects this, that Poland is a sovereign nation, a society that just happens to be more conservative than other Western European countries, and it's defending traditional family values based on a long attachment to Roman Catholicism.
Well, of course they would say that, but the point here is that this is about human rights, and those are guaranteed to all European citizens, all EU citizens, including Polish citizens, in the Lisbon Treaty, in the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And what we're speaking about is, non-discrimination, is equal rights, equality before the law, and of course, tolerance as a basic European value. So this is what we're speaking about, and it doesn't matter whether your government is more conservative or less conservative. Human rights are human rights.
Well, as I mentioned, this applies to the entire European Union, this Freedom Zone declaration. So our team's prepared a graphic that we can look at with our viewers based on research by the Europe division of ILGA, the International LGBTI Association. And now they've looked at dozens of kinds of rights areas, from same-sex marriage and adoption to employment and education access. And they've given a score from 0%, meaning gross violations of rights, to 100 for full equality. So we can see that Malta is scoring very highly at the top on average of all categories. Then just behind Belgium, Luxembourg and France, all around 70%. In the middle, we have our guests' countries, Germany in 12th place, sort of the middle, and Slovakia 20th. And right at the bottom, we have Poland, Latvia, Romania and Bulgaria, which all score under 20% on that ranking. So, Terry Reintke, a very picture there. To be clear, this declaration is about the whole EU. And are there particular areas that you think can be looked at across the entire EU or at an EU level?
Absolutely. I mean, what we were not trying to do is to just single out certain member states that have to do more for LGBTI rights, but we want to give a push to all member states and to the European Union as a whole to do more for LGBTI rights. And if I look at my own country, Germany, we still have a long way to go to have a fully inclusive legislation. For example, when it comes to trans people, we have a law there that is still not based on self-determination. This is going to be a topic that Germany definitely has to work on, but we also see these issues across the EU. There is still a long way to go. We have made a lot of progress over the past years, but we also still have a lot to do.
Michelle Šimecka, I said Slovakia in 20th place. It actually scores 0 on one of the ILGA categories, family. Same-sex partnerships not legal in your country. And also, of course, no adoption by same-sex couples because the couples aren't recognised. A human rights lawyer became Slovakia's ombudsman in 2019 and highlighted these issues of LGBTIQ rights. Do you see that change is happening from inside of Slovakia?
Well, I can certainly see them on the horizon, or I hope to see them. But at the moment, unfortunately, the situation isn't improving. Rather, I think it's going from bad to worse. The one thing is that not only we're one of the few countries which doesn't have a civil union or civil partnerships legislation, but from the perspective of the law or of the state, these couples and their children are practically invisible. They don't have any legal protection. Mm-hmm. And actually, the discourse is even getting worse. There was a piece of legislation, a constitutional amendment, recently voted in Parliament, where it was defeated, but a number of ruling party MPs voted in favor, which is the same as in Hungary, which could potentially lead to children being taken away from their parents of those of same-sex couples. So obviously it was defeated, but the discourse, I think, is wrong in the wrong direction, and the LGBTI community in Slovakia is fearful, and indeed lots of people, lots of families are actually even considering leaving potentially. So no, it's not good enough.
OK, well, let's have a look at the EU-wide picture again then. Of course, this declaration that we've talked about, this majority of MEPs supporting it. But as I said, it doesn't have any particular legal weight or status. The European Commission does have the power to come up with rules for the EU states on all sorts of issues. We have a soundbite of the European Commissioner for Equality, Helena Dalli from Malta. She has made some promises to improve the situation.
Our strategy aims to ensure that LGBTIQ people are safe and have equal opportunities to participate fully in society and thus reach their full potential. The Commission has started implementing this new strategy to guarantee that each measure included in it will materialize in the coming 5 years.
So Helena Dalli speaking there very forcefully, very strongly. Terry Ranker, to come back to you, this does beg the question, what practical and legal action is likely to come? The EU Commission has already withheld funds, for example, from these LGBT-free zones in Poland that we've talked about, but those zones are still there.
Well, I think, first of all, it is a great success for us that we have now this LGBTIQ equality strategy. It's a historic first, and I think that this is something that we have to note. But obviously now we need concrete legislative action. And one of the things that the European Parliament is asking for is to have infringement procedures against Poland on the basis of these LGBTI-free zones, because we say that they constitute already now discrimination and that the Commission has to act. But we also want to go beyond that, because we want to improve the situation of LGBTI people in the European Union. And one of the very practical things that we hope the European Commission is going to come forward with very soon is to have a mutual recognition of documents, of certificates, like, for example, marriage or birth certificates, so that we as LGBTI people, as EU citizens, can also enjoy full rights as EU citizens, for example, with regards to freedom of movement.
Michelle Šimecka, your thoughts on this? Because, your part of the world, if I may say, the so-called Visegrad group of states, the governments have been saying for a long time, we feel very attacked by the European Commission on many issues, including these issues of values and rights.
Well, yes, but in part because, especially when it comes to Poland and Hungary, I mean, there is a clear breach of the EU principles. So it's and it doesn't mean that these countries are targeted specifically. It just means that these happen to be the two countries under Article 7, which are in breach of these values. So I think here the Commission must act. And in addition to what Terry said, when it comes to what the EU can do, I think it's crucially important to protect the rule of law. And again, the Polish case is illustrative in a way, because if you don't have, say, independent courts, then it's impossible to defend fundamental rights, including equality and non-discrimination. Here, the example of the recent ruling in Poland to de facto ban abortion is precisely showing how a pliant, politically motivated judiciary can in fact lead to infringement on human rights. So here, I think the European Union, apart from all the areas, that has to be firm on the rule of law, on independent courts, because they are the ones which can protect and effectively protect fundamental rights.
And we just have time to talk about cultures and attitudes. A few months ago, I spoke to Helena Dalli, the European Equality Commissioner. She said that she thinks legislation on its own isn't enough. A change in attitudes and cultures needs to happen. But Terry Ranke, do they go together? The legislation changes the culture, or the culture changes the legislation?
Well, I think it's true both ways. But if you look at a country like Malta, I mean, in the beginning, you were referring to Poland as a Catholic country. Malta is a deeply Catholic country. And over a certain period of time, with legislation, a lot has changed also in the attitudes of people. And I think that legislation does make a difference. And this is why it's so important that as lawmakers, we really take a step forward here and we improve the situation of LGBTI people inside of the European Union.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I'd like to thank you both so much for taking part in this discussion. And we will surely come back to this topic to see what has changed in a few months and years' time. Thanks to you both.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
And thanks very much to you for watching. I hope to see you soon for more European news here on France 24.